Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny. Romeo and Juliet has been adapted so many times on the big screen that it's hard to count. From Nomeo and Juliet to more subtle titles like West Side Story, the star-crossed lovers' tragedy has been retold time and again. Most recently, the teenager story was adapted into Romeo and Juliet, released in 2013, that tries to stick very closely to the original play. William Shakespeare's version of the play seems to closely link with this adaptation. And then we have good old Romeo plus Juliet by Baz Luhrmann, which came out in 1996. 17 years might separate these films, but the release dates feel backwards. While Romeo and Juliet is more historically accurate, R plus J feels very modern. It features guns, cars, and television. The movies themselves don't point out all the differences. If we look more closely into the characters, where the story unfolds, we will find major differences from Shakespeare's original Romeo. Romeo and Juliet's Douglas Booth and Romeo plus Juliet's Leonardo DiCaprio play entirely different Romeos, apart from the original Romeo of the House of Montague. Let's dive in and do a quick character study of our main man, Mr. R.M. In the opening of the original play, Romeo is very troubled and depressed. He is mopey, like a teenage girl who has just gotten dumped. Romeo seems pretty pathetic and helpless, until he eyes Juliet, and immediately he is like a puppy. He has completely forgotten Rosaline and only wants Juliet. Once they are together, Romeo thinks only of Juliet and their future together. He's not interested in other people and does not care that she is a Capulet. After he's gotten over his "I feel bad for myself" attitude at the beginning of the play, he basically becomes a teenage boy fallen madly in love that could care less about the other things going on in the world. And by the end, when he finds out Juliet has died, he starts falling into that depressed state again, but this time it goes to extremes. Anyways, you all know what happens, and sadly the star-crossed lovers are no more. So I'm going to start with Douglas Booth's version of Romeo from Romeo and Juliet, which came out in 2013. The film looks and feels more original to the play. This version of Romeo, however, has some major character differences to our original tragic main man. In Shakespeare's play, Romeo enters in a very melancholy mood. He is extremely sad and depressed over Rosaline. In our 2013 adaptation, however, Romeo seems a little sad, but acts as if he'll get over it in a few hours. His mopiness isn't dramatic, and he just seems a little down, like a high school freshman who just got an F on their first major test of the semester. He doesn't act like Rosaline denying him is the end of the world, like the original Romeo does. Instead of being mopey, Romeo is tough, distant, and mysterious, almost like a Danny from Grease figure. They keep the moodiness in there by having Benvolio walk in on Romeo carving a statue, like the moody artist, but the mopey is at a minimum. However, the directors want Douglas Booth's Romeo to compete with Leo's in terms of looks. He is very handsome, and when we first see him, his shirt has a deep V-neck that shows off a chiseled chest. It's almost like a "my chest is buffer than yours" contest, in which Douglas Booth is facing off with Leo. A huge character difference that was never directly written into the original play was that in the 2013 version, Romeo has a very close, touchy relationship with his cousin Benvolio and his best friend Mercutio. They are hugging or touching, whether it's an arm around the shoulder or a playful push. It's almost in every scene that they are in together. This contrasts from R plus J's Romeo, who seems more distant towards his cousin and best friend. There's only one real instance where Romeo and Mercutio are close in R and J, and that is when Mercutio is dressed in drag and puts his arm around Romeo. They don't seem to make the 2013 Romeo character as selfish as the play version. In the play, Romeo is focused on nothing but getting himself with Juliet. In this most recent film adaptation, Romeo seems very sweet to the other characters. He is very much a good guy towards Juliet's nurse. He often puts his arm around her or holds her hands while they are talking. This contrasts with Leo's Romeo, who is much closer to the play Romeo in these regards. He is involved in speaking to the nurse, but he never gets close to her or opens up to her in a friendly manner. For Leo's Romeo, like the play Romeo, his interactions with the nurse are to a minimum and only so he could work things out with Juliet. The original play text never physically describes what Romeo looks like, but the 2013 adaptation makes him super athletic and muscular. Probably not like the Romeo Shakespeare imagined. During the scene where Romeo is under Juliet's balcony, Douglas Booth's Romeo begins climbing up a 30-foot wall while saying his lines, and when he gets to the top, he isn't even out of breath. He's also shown riding a horse around throughout the play in a majestic, athletic manner. Romeo is also much tougher and in control of his emotions in the 2013 adaptation, especially during the battle scene. He rides his horse into Tybalt's and Mercutio's battle, jumps off, and even pushes a Capulet henchman out of the way to get to Mercutio and Tybalt. Again, he is portrayed as very athletic and also very tough and brave. This contrasts with the original Romeo, who is more removed and depressed from everything. Douglas Booth's Romeo knows what he wants and will do anything to get it in a controlled, manly way. The directors have cast him in the light of macho man that girls will swoon over because he is tough, yet romantic in an almost alpha dog way. Douglas Booth's Romeo almost slips into Shakespeare's Romeo after he learns that Juliet is dead. He cries uncontrollably for a whole scene and can't get a hold of himself. He goes back to being depressed, emo, and dramatic. This is more true to our original Romeo. But then the directors show a low-cut shirt, washboard abs, and a well-formed jaw, and lead the viewer from feeling bad for the guy to being attracted to the guy. To put it bluntly, Douglas Booth's Romeo is all about sex appeal and doesn't follow our original Romeo too closely. Many of his lines have been changed, and other characters' lines have been changed too to make his version of Romeo seem more perfect than the original. They cut out Mercutio's "a curse upon both your houses" line entirely out of the movie during the fight scene, which makes Romeo out to be less villainous and less of an idiot for getting in the way and causing his best friend to die. It makes the viewer feel more sorry for him rather than saying, "You're pathetic, get over yourself." That's how the whole movie feels. Romeo has been altered to make everyone love him, and they have taken away his flaws to make him more of an attractive, less dramatic character. It has taken a piece from Romeo's character that is vital and important. Everything in the movie is blamed on fate, and poor Romeo just happened to get in the way of it. He's married to calamity. Leo's Romeo from Baz Luhrmann's 1996 Romeo plus Juliet does similar things and alters the original Romeo, but I think that the dark, gloomy side behind Romeo's character remains intact. While the sex appeal is there, from the bare chest to the cigarette in his lips, Romeo seems unstable and pretty true to the character in the depressed, mopey aspect of the original. Leo being cast as Romeo is very similar to Douglas Booth being cast as the same character, because they are trying to take a young teenage Romeo and create sex appeal for viewers. Douglas Booth is macho and tough, while Leonardo is sexy and mysterious. The cigarette makes him look older and cooler to viewers at the opening of the movie, compared to the opening of Shakespeare's play, where Romeo is moping around the forest and hiding in his room. One thing that stayed true with Leo's Romeo was that he seemed very unstable, emotional, and depressed, much like our original Romeo. You can see from these scenes, towards the end of the movie, that he has little control over his emotions and does everything in spite of how he is currently feeling, including killing Tybalt. I believe this aspect of Romeo's character is much like the original. While the original Romeo doesn't use guns and drugs to solve his problems, he does kill Tybalt out of an emotional rage and becomes insanely depressed when he learns that Juliet is dead. Leo's Romeo holds true to these character aspects, and that's why I would choose him as being closer to the original Romeo than Douglas Booth. Both portrayals of Romeo were amazing and weren't difficult to look at either, wink wink, but in the end, both heroes must go. For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo.
She broke your throne and she cut your hair, from